So welcome to the Dare to Disrupt session that we have today. I'll tell you quickly how we're going to go through it, and then I'll tell you a little bit, then we'll start into what we're going to do today. So, I'll speak first. I've got a few comments, and then we have a speaker from Renault Sport. We'll talk about some interesting things they're doing with racing and Internet of Things. So what I'm going to talk about today is innovation, transformation, and disruption. And you know, what I've been noticing is that this is a pretty scary concept for a lot of people and for some organizations as well. And it's scary, but it's unavoidable. Yeah, you could put your head in the sand and kind of ignore it and look the other way. But you know, the price for doing that, it only goes up, and things only get harder, and the risk is getting quite big, and there won't be a good outcome. So you don't want to go that direction. So when we talk about transformation and innovation, what kinds of things are we talking about? Well, there are new service models that we can anticipate, new products and new design requirements for existing products. Manufacturing companies and production companies are looking at new and better production techniques, taking advantage of some of these new technologies. One big payoff comes if you can change and enhance and remake your business processes. So that's an important dimension that we're looking at. You know, the ecosystem's changing, so there are new competitors and new partners. We have new workers coming into manufacturing. And at the end of the day, a lot of this transformation is about new business opportunities. So a lot of what we're talking about is different from the incremental approach or the continuous improvement approach that we are all familiar with, and the conventional ways of thinking about things. And we're really talking about doing things in new and different ways. When it comes to innovation, you know, I like to use this report from a McKinsey, this slide from a McKinsey report where they looked at manufacturing innovation and considered it as an economic engine. So the innovation they found comes from changes to product and process and productivity. And one way to measure that, and I know you can't probably see it on this chart, so I apologize for that, but these companies that they've been able to identify as an innovator versus a non-innovator, so just this black and white distinction. But the innovators tend to have better growth of employment during upturns. So when the economy is good, they can hire people. And they have a smaller decline in employment when things go bad during the downturns. So that seems to me to be a pretty good indicator that their business is more robust in a fundamental way. We also talk a little bit about disruption and digital disruption, and you know all these companies, but these companies are here because they fundamentally changed or disrupted some significant markets. You know, Apple with music, Netflix with movies, Amazon with books and bookstores, and then hotel rooms and car services with Airbnb and Uber. So these are some consumer examples. What does it mean for the industrial space? Well, you can collect data from anything and everything today. Excuse me. And you can collect it a lot more frequently. You can store and process it much more cheaply. So these basic facts can change the way you think about not only data, but what you do with the data and how you can change your business. So here are a couple of big ideas that I just want to put on the table. First, what I call manufacturing momentum. We see a real push around the globe, different governments supporting manufacturing programs of one kind or another. Innovation is a key theme. We see it showing up as new platforms, software platforms and device connectivity platforms and the like. When we talk about Internet of Things or digital transformation, we like to think of it in a comprehensive way. So, and what I mean by that is, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's the whole stack, it's the technology stack, and I'll go through what our view of that is. But it's also three-dimensional, three axes going beyond the four walls of the plant and out into service and a number of other dimensions. Another big idea is changing from asset lifecycle management viewpoint to a holistic asset performance management view. Of course, we see analytics everywhere. It's becoming pervasive in every application and in every device. IT's role is changing. So given all this, where do you start? And really, this is where a lot of our industrial companies are approaching ARC these days, saying, where should I start? I see all the problems, I see all the technology, I don't know what to do next. So let's look at that manufacturing momentum I talked about. Some of the drivers and enablers for this are things like government programs like smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0 or there's one in China, they're all over the globe really. So that's driving a lot of attention and a lot of innovation in manufacturing. The demographics are changing, so we're seeing a younger, more tech-savvy workforce, wondering why we're doing things the way we're doing them. 3D printing is changing, dramatically changing in some cases, the way parts are stored and made available. Of course, there's IIoT and emerging IT technologies. We'll spend a little more time on that. That are changing some of the economies of scale. So that's one of the dimensions that we start to think about when we ask, well, what's different, what's new? Well, you can do things a lot bigger and a lot cheaper than you could in the past. We see new service models, so a lot of opportunities to stay connected to your product after you manufacture it and after it's in use in the field. Robotics is changing a lot of things. Cognitive computing and artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is going, again, in all kinds of different directions. And all of these things are contributing to the rapid change that we see. So all this contributes to the underlying basis for a fundamental change and transformation of the industrial ecosystem. I like to say your company is sailing in a sea of change because everything's changing. The supply chains are transforming, design and engineering is changing, the aftermarket services are changing, relationships with customers are changing as a result of that. The products are different and the production is different. So everything's different. And it's an exciting time because we're not quite there, but we're certainly moving there quickly. So when we talk about innovation, another way to think about that is, we've got a lot more data, and from that data we can learn a lot. So you could say we've got a lot of information as well. We can use that data to help us think about new products and offer new services. We can use it for continuous improvement. But really, when you change your business models and processes and start to think about it strategically at that level, that's when the payoff comes for you, the big payoff. There may be some smaller ones along the way. So I decided to call this the traditionalist segments. These are the segments that you wouldn't think are going to change. They've been doing things, and getting by with some technology from decades ago. Some of the aging systems and business models and work processes, most of them, many of them across a lot of industries, in fact, were developed for the last century. But here we are in 2016. We're facing a host of disruptive technologies like clouds and ubiquitous networking and mobile devices and sensors everywhere and big data and analytics, and you know the list. If you take those together, there's a huge potential for a step change to the business outcomes and competitiveness. So we think things can change in the supply chain, at the enterprise level, in operations, and all those things. And if you take all that together, you really could be talking about doing business in a different way. So you could be, changing your company to better compete against those companies like you who aren't changing. Or even more important, those companies that you don't see on the radar, that you don't necessarily think of as competitors, but with some new technology of their own, they may find a way to outflank you and take a big chunk of your business. So if we look at that digital transformation of the core business operations, there's 6 basic dimensions that we should think about. The supply chain, the boardroom, where I think it'll make a difference. I don't think it's very clear from this picture, but what I tried to show here is that, we're at the dawn of having a lot of artificial intelligence in those board meetings as another contributor. We'll see it happen. It's already starting. Certainly in plant operations and maintenance, there's a vast opportunity to improve and upgrade. Changes are needed in engineering design, in the products themselves, and in aftermarket services as well. I mentioned that we're thinking about new platforms to solve some of these problems. So the digital platform, the software platform for the 21st century, is different from the sort of client-server model, hardware model, with monolithic applications running on top of that. And instead what we see is a collection of applications and services in a typically cloud-based platform that you can bring to bear to solve a host of different problems. And this is really the way that the industry is moving, and moving rather quickly. If I look at that from the standpoint of a digital platform or an enterprise IIoT platform, we consider these 8 different dimensions. So that platform would include security throughout, built-in security, analytics and artificial intelligence, integration capabilities, the ability to create and enable applications, certainly data management and data processing capability. Device connectivity and device management is an important piece. What I called here operational intelligence or business process management. Once you've got the data and you've applied some analytics, you need to do something with it, so you need to be able to trigger some workflows or take some other actions. And then in a lot of cases, some advanced modeling and simulation capabilities can come to bear to help you move to the next step. So with that kind of a platform in place, you can spin up instances quickly, test things out, and then roll them into a bigger production. So you can try new ideas, innovate, and transform. So digital transformation allows you to get the most out of your assets, to attract a modern workforce, to update and streamline work processes, to get new insights into operations and let them run more efficiently. It lets you do things in a different way than you're used to doing. And I think you saw in one of the presentations this morning this wheel or this comprehensive industrial Internet of Things representation where we talk about connected operations and connected workers, connected supply chain, connected enterprise, connected services, and connected products. So there's a lot of technologies in this center, and there's the notion of business processes and lifecycle management, which are also important. But in the end of the day, it's about all of this stuff. It's not just the connectivity, it's about the connectivity and then what you do with it. And I think Andy also went through this slide this morning, so I won't spend a lot of time on it right now, but the point is that if you look in each one of these dimensions from, the supply chain, the production, the services, the demand and customer side, the supply and supply chain side, and the design and engineering, every one of those has a significant transformational challenge and opportunity ahead. We've been hearing a lot about asset performance management, and I use this chart to talk about that a little bit and about a new way of thinking about asset performance management. And if you look at the sort of tan-colored squares near the bottom here, with things like planning and scheduling and parts and consumables management, dispatch management, workflow management, tools management, and vehicles management, those are kind of classic capabilities or functionalities within an EAM system. But today, we've got the ability on the bottom here. Do I have? Yeah, here. With low-cost sensors and intelligence at the edge of the network, cloud capability, remote monitoring, advanced analytics, and mobile devices, and drones, and 3D printing, and a host of new technologies that can come into play that can enable you to do things faster and better and speed up your business. And in the process, you move from focusing, solely, when you think about asset performance or asset management, from focusing solely on the maintenance to how do I keep my production running? How do I coordinate my maintenance requirements and optimization requirements with my production optimization requirements? And it's really the tying together of those two that makes this asset performance management so powerful. Another way to think about it is to think about it more holistically. So, that asset in the plant, you need to be able to connect to your supply chain for parts and consumables, to third parties for services, to the asset design team and to your engineering team to support it and to improve it for the next generation, to the asset manufacturer so they can get some feedback on it and perhaps support you directly. When I talk about integrating or better serving the operations requirements, it comes down to being able to interpret the demand signals as well and make sure that you don't do anything on the maintenance side that interferes with you meeting those demands. And of course, that goes hand in hand with meeting your business priorities. So that's a holistic approach to asset performance management that we haven't typically seen in the marketplace. When it comes to analytics and IT, we've been using software and analytical tools for decades, really, and trying to, and over time, these capabilities have been growing. And I know you can't really read much of what's on here, if anything. This is from Global Information Technology Report from the World Economic Forum. And I thought it was a nice chart because it talks about you know, a host of things that we see and encounter all the time now. So, you know, back in the day, we talked a lot about linear programming and some Monte Carlo simulations and some basic analytics capabilities, and we were, you know, lucky to have some systems that could support them. But we moved on in a number of different directions. So the dimensions they use are volume and complexity of data, and analytics degree of sophistication. So, you know, it's kind of an arbitrary way of looking at it, but it's a nice way because there's a whole host of things, and there's predictive maintenance and machine learning, and I think they've even included IoT in the way they've looked about this, and Industry 4.0 and things like that. But the point is, this has been growing, and it's been growing in a couple of interesting ways. One way that it's been growing is, you know, a lot of these things used to require high horsepower servers and hardware, high expense software, and highly qualified data scientists to run the whole thing. But today, a lot of these things you find embedded in applications. They may run on your system, on your laptop, or even on your phone. So that's a radical change and makes all this power a lot more accessible. Now, if we think about that from the standpoint of IT, well, on the plant floor, we're moving towards or trying to get to smart connected machines. And what does that mean? At the enterprise level, these powerful analytics platforms that I've been talking about have been common, and they've been supported by the IT organization, the machines on the plant floor, obviously by the OT organization, and how do you connect the two? Well, those things are coming together by virtue of the trends that I talked about. But still, the merging of the expertise from these two groups is vitally important to make this happen. So it's fine to have some sort of off-the-shelf and easy-to-access capability in the plant applications, but in many cases, IT support is vital to get the most out of that as well. And what kind of analytics are we talking about? So I've kind of mixed a number of different things on this slide just to try to make a point, but we're already seeing, and you may be seeing, things like cognitive computing and visual analytics and machine learning and predictive analytics and streaming analytics. But these things are powering you know, other kinds of solutions like augmented reality and smart machines. And they're showing up in the traditional plant applications like MES applications and EAM and EMI and maybe HMI and a host of other applications. So this trend is real, and it's happening fast. And it's adding a lot of power and potential to the plant ecosystem. So given all that, where do we start? Well, one way to think about that is, what are some of the barriers that we face? And so this comes down to culture in many cases, or just, you know, the way business is done and the way organizations run. But a lot of times the organization has some built-in biases that you know, they may not even know they're there, but they reinforce the traditional ways of doing things. And they come at you in all kinds of different ways. It's like, you know, that's not the way we do it here, or we've been doing that for 30 years, so there's nothing new. There's lots of little things like that that are already in the ecosystem, so you have to root those out a little bit. Even if your company is a little forward-thinking, and your executive leadership is on board with this idea that we should be using some of these technologies to make some transformational moves, they may all be coming from a slightly different perspective, and they all may have their own view about what needs to change. And then we're trapped as humans by the tendency to think about things linearly. So a linear projection or an incremental change is something that we're capable of thinking of, and that's when we try to think about the future, we often think about that. When in reality, the big payoff for some of these things is to throw everything out the window and rethink it, and then sort of keep the best of what you've got and maybe make some fundamental changes to have your business run differently, interact with your customers differently, or with your supply chain, or with your distribution network, or with all of the above. Right now, with the stage we're at, there are some reference cases and examples out there, but they're not all that many, and they may not be directly applicable to what you're trying to do, so new approaches are sometimes hard to think of on your own. But we do know that it's not okay, and it's really not sufficient to say, well, we're going to change because of the technology. It's not really a good enough reason, but it's certainly part of the innovation required to make this change. One way, we looked at some ways of measuring Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things maturity. And what we found is that companies that are already using industrial Internet of Things, they also are already demonstrating better performance in each of these critical dimensions. So things like decision making, digital information, business processes, dealing with fixed assets, and systems and infrastructure and cybersecurity. In each one of those dimensions, we find that the companies that are already using industrial Internet of Things are ahead of their counterparts. So, given that these disruptive technologies are here, we've started to help some of our clients with some workshops to really sort through this, look at their own position and their own maturity in this regard, and take some specific steps to do that. And down the road, that involves figuring out where you're at, where you want to be, developing a roadmap, and how it impacts various parts of your company and your organization from all these different dimensions. So it's a complex thing, but if you look at it, it's not really only technology. So, in summary, we think that the industrial Internet of Things increases the value of your existing infrastructure. It allows you to get more uptime and better performance out of the existing assets in the plant and more responsive operations. It does present a new set of opportunities and probably risks for folks in operations, but that's all about taking advantage and leveraging the data and the analytics that you have, as well as leveraging third parties for non-core operating systems. In other words, you may, for example, outsource some of the machines or buy the output of some machines instead of buying the machines outright, for an example. It's critical to find a way to overcome the gap that many companies still have today between their IT and their OT systems, and better leverage that IT organization. For machine makers, there's a huge opportunity to reinvent the relationship with the customer by having connected products. At one level, you can change from a model where you make a machine, sell it to your customers, and then stay at the other end of the phone in case they have a problem, or you can sell them the output of the machines and run the machines for them, and deliver on a service level agreement that you've agreed to in advance, and have an ongoing relationship with that customer for quite a long time. So it's a different mindset, it's a different game, but it's a big opportunity as well. And finally, we know that this disruption is a bit unpredictable, but it's going to happen. So what's your strategy? You need to innovate in a number of different dimensions in order to gain competitive advantage and to, in the process, improve the speed of change that your organization can tolerate. So that speed of business change also becomes an important dimension. We've got a blog site that I encourage you all to check out from time to time. It's a good way to stay abreast of some of the latest news and trends in this area. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.